This has to do with simplifying trig identities, or trig expressions. Number one, match each expression from the list on the left. And so we're gonna list things here. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the easier ones. Remember, there is an identity that says sine over cosine is tangent. So C is equal to tangent theta. That cancels. Remember the one I asked you to memorize? Sine squared of theta plus cosine squared of theta. 1. Remember that 1 over cosine is the same thing as saying secant theta. And remember that cosine over sine is cotangent theta. Now we have cotangent squared theta plus 1. We have cosecant theta. Well, we know that cosecant theta is equal to 1 over sine theta. And remember that cotangent squared plus 1 is equal to cosecant squared theta. Now the last one, you have secant squared theta minus tangent squared theta. Okay, we know that secant squared theta is 1. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this one over here on the side. We know that secant squared theta is 1 plus tangent squared theta minus tangent squared theta. And we know that tangent squared theta minus tangent squared theta is 1. So this would be equal to 1. It says simplify each expression. We know that sine theta, we're going to keep it as sine theta. Secant is going to be the same thing as 1 over cosine theta. And we know that sine theta over cosine theta, that's what you're going to have. Sine theta over cosine theta equals tangent theta. And that's what it is when it's simplified. We're going to go ahead and do number 3. Cosecant theta is the same thing as saying 1 over sine theta times sine theta. So you have sine theta over sine theta. So remember, sine theta divided by sine theta is 1. That's 1. Number 4, we have cotangent theta, which cotangent theta is equal to 1 over tangent theta times secant theta is 1 over cosine theta. So tangent theta is 1 divided by sine theta cosine theta is equal to 1 over cosine theta times, not equals, times. So you're going to get the reciprocal of sine theta over cosine theta. So cosine theta over sine theta times 1 over cosine theta, and those are going to cancel. So you're left with 1 over sine theta, which is cosecant theta. So I'll review this again. Cotangent theta is equal to 1 over tangent theta. Secant theta is 1 over cosine theta. So you have 1 divided by sine over cosine times 1 over cosine. All you have to do is get the reciprocal of sine over cosine. So you have cosine over sine. The cosines cancel. So you have 1 over sine is equal to cosecant theta. And that's what it simplifies. So let me write a yellow line so you know what it is when it's simplified. Oh, okay. So move this over a little bit so we can have room. I'm going to do number 5, but I'm going to do it on this side over here. I'll probably use a different color. So we have cosine theta over secant theta. And this is number 5, and we're having to simplify. Remember that we have cosine theta times 1 over secant theta. Now 1 over secant theta is cosine theta. So it's cosine theta times cosine theta, which is cosine squared theta. So that's what it's going to be for number 5. To simplify this, I'm going to change number 6 into cotangent. So please follow my logic. Tangent of theta is 1 over cotangent theta plus cotangent theta. I want a common denominator. So to find a common denominator, I need cotangent theta right there. So the numerator, I got to multiply cotangent theta. So I have 1 plus cotangent theta times cotangent theta, cotangent squared theta over cotangent theta. So 1 plus cotangent squared theta is 1 plus cotangent is cosecant squared theta over cotangent theta. So what I'm going to do is 1 over cotangent theta is tangent theta times cosecant squared theta. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to make cosecant squared theta into sine, because the reciprocal of cosecant squared theta is 1 over sine squared theta. Remember that tangent theta is sine theta over cosine theta times 1 over sine squared theta. So sine theta cancels, and then one of the sines cancels. So you have 1 over cosine theta sine theta. Now if you don't want cosine theta sine theta, then what you would write it as is you would write it as secant theta cosecant theta. So tangent of theta is 1 over cotangent theta plus cotangent theta times cotangent tangent theta is cotangent squared theta. Same denominator. So 1 plus cotangent theta, that's identity, is cosecant squared theta. I brought cotangent theta from the denominator to the numerator, so that's tangent theta, times cosecant squared theta. I changed that into sine, so it's 1 over sine squared theta. Tangent is sine over cosine, so one of the sines cancel, so you have 1 over cosine theta sine theta. So it's secant theta cosecant theta. I'm going to rewrite number 7, and I'm going to say cosecant theta is the same thing as saying 1 over sine theta. So actually this is equal to tangent theta over sine theta minus tangent theta times sine theta. And I want to have a common factor, our common denominator. So I'm going to say sine theta is my common denominator. So I'm going to multiply times sine theta. So I have tangent theta minus tangent theta sine squared theta, because sine times sine gives you sine squared, divided by sine theta. So now you have to have the factor, the common factor, so you know it's going to be tangent theta. So it's 1 minus sine squared theta over sine theta. Why? Because you factored out tangent theta and you're left with 1 minus sine squared theta. Remember that cosine squared theta plus sine squared theta equals 1. So this will equal 1 minus sine squared theta equals tangent squared theta. Cosine squared theta. So we have tangent theta times cosine squared theta over sine theta. I'm going to separate the cosine squared theta. I'm going to say tangent theta. I'm going to say cosine theta over sine theta. So I'm going to separate this. You have tangent theta over 1 cosine theta over sine theta, and we're left with cosine theta. Cosine theta over sine theta is cotangent, so it's tangent theta times cotangent theta times cosine theta. Well, guess what? Tangent theta and cotangent theta are 1 because they're reciprocal, so you're left with cosine theta.